Okay, I'm on my way to the public open house at Barrie City Hall for the draft Climate Adaptation Plan. Gonna ask some questions, mostly just listen, hopefully not argue. The reason I'm going, I'm interested in adaptation of climate change, but reading through the plan, a number of us are pretty concerned about some omissions in it. There's no mention of a local food policy, so support for community gardens, support for local food producers, farmers markets, that sort of thing. And there's no mention of social justice issues in relation to climate change, and that's a big deal. Perhaps one of the main ones is that there's an adaptation plan. There's no mitigation plan as of now. They're doing some mitigation measures, but only to come in line with provincial requirements. So mitigation is doing something about the root cause of the problem. Adaptation is sort of throwing your hands up and dealing with the consequences as they come as best you can, I suppose. All right, here we are, Barrie City Hall. Let's go in. Hi. My selfie stick.
Look at this. Come walk in and
doing?
right? Prepare it.
Yeah.
Video? Video or picture?
Video.
Video.
It's got you. Where do you start? Guiding principles?
I don't know. I saw a mission statement, so I figured that was the beginning. Started there. Guiding principles.
So it looks like the idea is that you go around in the circle and read, and you can provide feedback by
Selfie stick.
I like my selfie stick too.
I've never actually seen these. Is it like have a clicker thing, or do you have to do it?
It does have a clicker thing, but I never thought I'd use the stupid thing, so I threw out the cord. There's supposed to be like a cord that you run up there that controls
I
it.
just wondered how that works. Yeah, I took a picture.
Yeah, so you can
Inclusive and coordinated.
use post-it notes to provide feedback, I guess. Providing feedback is good. All of this stuff pretty much is in the document itself. So if you,
I should probably.
I'm gonna have to find somebody to talk to here. Jeff has agreed to be on video, which is very exciting. Thank you. My main reason for being here, I guess, is just to ask, well, not so much ask questions, I guess. I have some questions, but I'm kind of interested in the process that you guys use to narrow down priorities, and I guess a few things that I feel are missing, so I'd be interested in sort of hearing whether they were considered and then left off, and if so, then what the reasons for that might be. If you could.
Sure. So one thing I'm just going to say, we followed. So we're working with ICLEI Canada on this project, and they're actually the BARC process. So maybe they can ask them to speak to the process.
Oh, they're here?
They're here. So
Awesome.
so
All right.
they know this stuff inside and out. So
All right, another person convinced to be on video. We'll see.
yeah. So that we actually went through the whole process and kind of went through what the impacts are, did the vulnerability and risk assessments of those, and then moved through. So it's a very it's a step-by-step process that they certainly can explain that well to you. And so in terms of some of the priorities, we are now at the phase where we have sort of a list of actions now that we're looking for some input from the public on what some of the priorities are. So that's some of the boards who are here that we're actually, there's just sort of a dot exercise where we're trying to see what sort of the top priorities are, which things should be looked at first to be addressed as a first priority. But we can talk through sort of the process of how it narrowed down from what the potential impacts from climate change are, just based on the models and the science, how it got down to what the impacts are, and then how we kind of narrow it down to what we see forward on with the strategy.
Okay. And so then Laura is involved. What's some of your name? Relate. Advance.
Yes.
Okay.
So Laura is, our main job is we work on community engagement, facilitation, and process of collaborative planning components of projects. So getting the right people involved and shaping things, listening to what people have to say, and bringing that all together into a planning process.
Okay.
So we were working with Climate Canada on this to deliver the BARC program, which the city had asked us to help them through the process of BARC.
Okay. So what would your community engagement process look like then?
The community engagement was basically a two-stage process. We went out in August and September, October to get some feedback, just to talk to residents about how they're experiencing climate change, what sort of impacts they've seen, really focus on the education side of things, and just to try to get some of the captured experience of people living in the area, what sort of things that they're seeing and how they're being impacted on a daily basis in terms of changing climates.
My eyesight isn't so good that I can read this from a distance.
I need to take my coat off because I'm boiling.
So that was the general side of things, and now we're back. We did have an online survey as well. So what we did was actually went out to a number of different community centers, to some of the some events happening in the summer, weekend events, and just had sort of a booth set up and kind of talk to people how they felt about climate change. So capture some of those ideas. And then we had the survey as well that was online. We had some feedback from the public coming in. And then this is the sort of second piece where we actually took some of that to help shape the goal areas and some of the focus areas for the plan, for the strategy, and then we're sort of presenting something back to get people's reaction and sort of feedback on what things that were
Right. Okay.
and just in parallel with that, we actually had a stakeholder advisory group that was helping us shape this project. And it was we met with them twice over the course of this project, and representatives from wider sort of social, economic, environmental sort of perspective to give sort of a more in-depth perspective on on what sort of climate change experiences we're seeing in Barrie and what sort of so we had 2 half-day workshop sessions with them as well, and some of them have been back. They're also providing feedback now and on this strategy.
Right.
So they really actually helped us shape some of the focus areas for the strategy. And then just in terms of that was sort of the public and stakeholder side, but we also did work with a multi-departmental climate adaptation group from the city of about kind of 12 to 15 staff in different departments that we actually worked with. We actually had 5 half-day workshops with them over the course of 3 months, intensively going through the BARC process.
And the going and talking to community members really interesting. So how did you guys do that?
Yeah, sort of on the street type of interviews. 2 cities from Barrie were actually out on the ground doing quite a bit of the conversations, just expanding out to a few areas. So we had some of the weekend, there's a couple of larger events where they're just out downtown.
Right, okay.
And, we had a couple of boards set up that basically had a few, we had some images on there, and we were asking people how they felt it. So it was a big sort of board, how they felt it, and we had sort of a number of different theme areas around climate impacts that we wanted to get people's thoughts on how they've experienced it, and if there's anything that they think the city should be doing to help address some of those impacts. So we find it's actually very difficult to talk to people about climate change, but doing those sort of, we call them pop-up events, getting out. We were at Georgian College as well, getting some input from some younger folks as well, just sort of a mix of people, and that's really focusing on sort of the average Joe, I guess we would call it, the people that wouldn't necessarily come to a public meeting about climate change.
Right.
Get the people that have very specific interest in climate change that would be something like this, but going out to sort of where people spend their time, we found is a very effective strategy, just to start talking to regular people, getting their regular thoughts on climate change. 4 years ago, it was way harder. Now people are actually talking about climate change. So we've seen a significant shift in people's knowledge and just comprehension of climate.
Right.
And we focus a lot more on how are you personally seeing impacts in your daily life. So people are actually seeing things, like less snow in the winters. They're seeing the weather events, flooding, things are actually experiencing some of the impacts. People are starting to see how their lives are changing in that experience. So I think it's still hard for them to comprehend what 3 degrees temperature is going to mean in 20, 30 years, but
Yeah.
they're starting to see it over their last 10 years.
All right, it'll be interesting to see how the sound turns out, but thanks. And equally as echoey. So, Layla Barrie?
Leah Barrie.
Leah Barrie,
Yes.
sorry.
That's okay.
No, there's no L there.
No.
So you guys were involved with the methodology of sort of narrowing down a list of risks.
Yeah, so what we do typically is we have a program that's called the Building Adaptive and Resilient Communities Program, and it's a BARC, yes, and it is a milestone framework that provides kind of a step-by-step process for getting from general climate information down to specific actionable items. And so that starts with a scan of climate science. So we start synthesizing international, national, and provincial climate science. And we use that.
They're having a good time over there. Those are the greens. It's a green party.
So we use that to generate what we call impact statements. And so that kind of is anything and everything that might happen within the municipality to the corporation to the community as a result of climate change. So from that we come up with this long list of impacts and we run that through a vulnerability and then a risk assessment process. And so the vulnerability process looks at 2 things. It looks at sensitivity. So if this thing happens today, how sensitive are we to it? And then it also looks at adaptive capacity, asking the same question. If this happens today, what do we already have in place that will help us respond or cope? And then as a result of that, we come up with vulnerability results. And typically you can use that as a prioritization tool, saying that we're going to move the highest vulnerable impacts forward in the planning process. You can choose to do any or all of them, depending on how big or small the scope of your project is. And then we look at risk, and risk is about likelihood, so how likely is it that this impact is going to occur? And it's also about consequence. So if it occurs, what are the implications to the social, physical, ecological, and economic systems within the municipality? So then as a result of that, we then have impacts that have scores. We have medium risks, medium high risks, extreme risks, all that kind of thing. So then as a result of that, typically we look at the highest scoring risks, and we plan for those as our first step. Adaptation is typically meant to be iterative, so you do this once, you do it again in maybe 5 years, and then at that point you reevaluate what you didn't look at and what you didn't bring forward. So from there, then it gets to action generation. So we start brainstorming how can we respond to these highest risk impacts, and what do those response looks like. And it's really a brainstorming exercise that we talk to anybody who wants to talk to us. We do surveys, we do workshops, and that's what we did in this case. And we come up with a long list, a giant list of things that might work to respond. We also, in this instance, we did a best practice review, so we looked at other municipalities similar in size throughout Canada, and what are they doing? What have they done? What's effective? What kind of actions are they using? And we integrated that into our long list as well. And then we took it through a further evaluation process. We called it an actions evaluations matrix, and that's outlined in the plan. And that is further divided into a variety of categories like sustainability, effectiveness, that sort of thing. So it's looking at co-benefits, it's looking at implications for greenhouse gas emissions, it's looking at time scales, resources, that sort of thing. And then for each action, we allocate a score of high, medium, or low. And the result of that generates a list, that long list, which has a priority associated with it. So we've got must do, we've got monitor, and then we've got investigate further. And so this plan currently has these actions that have been organized into each of the goals are all the must-dos, with a few strategic monitors, and then an additional layer of cross-cutting actions that are kind of not specific to any one goal and not necessarily constrained by anything in particular. Usually they're underway already, they have resources, they have capacity, and it's just about integrating a climate change lens into it. So they're kind of win-wins, low-hanging fruit. That's the language we use to kind of talk about those.
Okay.
And that kind of brings us to here. So we have these actions, and now we're looking for feedback on them. If we missed anything, refinements to the actions. And then we start to go and get into the nitty-gritty details of what's needed for each action's implementation considerations.
Okay.
So is it short-term, medium-term, long-term? What's the cost? Are there any associated or existing plans and policies that could kind of further it or help it or support it that it relates to? And partnerships. Partnerships is another key part of implementation, and so that's kind of the follow-up step to this, is to kind of further enhance that. We have that information in a draft form currently, and we're kind of seeking further input from the municipality to talk more specifically about leads and supports and partnerships and that sort of thing.
But where does it go from here then? With the input that you guys have, what's the next steps?
So Jeff might be able to speak to that a little bit more, but we're
Yes.
going through essentially a 3-month review process where we're looking for input from the community. Where we're
Is that
looking-
from now?
Yes. So
Okay.
it started last week.
Okay.
The 3 months kind of started
Okay.
then. So there's an online platform, a survey, where the public can comment on the strategy. There's this event, and then it's been taken to senior management, and it'll be taken to a couple of other kind of key groups to get their insights into it. And then that's all working towards a final draft, which will be ready in a few months, and then that goes to council and gets their input. It's hoped that there's I believe it's a review every 5 years of the plan to see how it's going.
Right.
As part of our work in the meantime between now and the final draft, we're going to be working on essentially a tracking part, or a tracking component of the plan, which is all about indicators. So what metrics can we use to measure the effectiveness of this plan? Are we doing what we set out to do? Are the things that we outlined actually achieving the results that we wanted them to achieve?
Okay.
And so building in some of those mechanisms into the planning framework. And then the city is actually going to be part of the BARC program. So that's our milestone 4 and 5, which is implementation and monitoring and review. So they will have completed milestones 1 through 3 once this plan is done.
Okay.
And it's a 5-milestone program. So then they'll get support from my organization, ICLEI Canada, to implement it over a period of a year, and to initiate some monitoring and review pieces into that as well, so that there's some formal mechanisms to kind of track things.
I know that you guys also have the PCP
Yeah.
program. Is that something that they're looking at? Is that-
So the City of Barrie actually is already a member of PCP. They became a member in 2001, and they completed local action plans for both the corporate and community on greenhouse gas emissions and reductions associated with that. I believe they completed it in 2008. So that plan has been in existence for quite some time. This has actually kind of come up a couple of times this evening, and I don't have a specific answer on the status of that. That would be kind of a question for the city, but work is already underway. They also, on that end of things, and they also have an energy management plan, I believe, that they released in 2012.
Okay. So they have more of a mitigation plan than simply working toward the step already existing provincial guidelines. Is PCP over and above that then?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. So PCP is you develop an inventory for the corporation and for the community, and you set targets, and then you develop an action plan to achieve those targets. And there's a check back to see whether or not, again, the milestones 4 and 5 of that program are implementation and monitoring and review.
So we should I should, if I'm interested, check with the city to see
What the status is of
what the status
the
is.
implementation
and-
of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. The PCP website is hosted by FCM, which is our partner on the program, which is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And so they, if you're interested in the plan itself, I believe it's up there. So any municipality that's achieved milestone 3 means that there's a plan.
Okay.
And so then that plan is posted online.
Okay. Super. Well, thank you.
Sure.
And we'll see how this turns out.
Okay.
Get the lights on here.
Talking about the meeting and how it went, or
Yeah. So we were just at this climate change public open house, and it's for the draft Climate Adaptation Strategy. It was pretty good. I only got a chance to talk to representatives from Laura, which is one of the consulting firms. They dealt with the communications part of it, facilitating part of it. and then I talked with a representative from BARC, from ICLEI Canada, and they sort of were the folks that were responsible for identifying risks and priorities. What do you think of it?
That was also what Katie Thompson did as well, right? She was the risk management manager.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought it was good that they're doing it. I thought it was good that they're giving us the opportunity, I guess. But again, it just comes down to, it's weak, or they're looking at adaptation and not mitigation, right? So we would like some bigger steps to be taken. Hopefully, our words to them tonight, our discussions didn't fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Basically we'll go from there. Talking to the mayor was pretty good at the end, though. I think that was really good, and a couple of questions you asked him at the end, I feel like that kind of gave me more drive in a sense.
Yeah, the mayor came down. Barrie has a fantastic mayor. So now we're on our way up to Aurelia. We're gonna go have a beer with
Some Blue Dot people, some friends, yeah. Boring guys. You don't want to be boring. It's a nice selfie stick.
Is that any good? What? Oh, it's not on? Oh, it is a video. Yes.